Welcome back to Energetically You, where we talk about optimal wellness, abundant mindset, and confident decision making. I'm your host, Megan Swan, a wellness coach and consultant, and the founder of Megan Swan Wellness and the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. I help high performance humans, leaders, and modern companies thread more wellness into their lifestyle and company culture so it becomes a way of life and not a check mark on their to-do list. Today on the podcast, I am so excited to present Natalie Haynes. She is a corporate training consultant, educator, speaker, and psychotherapist. Natalie works in the space where connection and belonging can be interrupted either within the relationship with ourselves or with others. Her passion is to teach people to remember who they are through experiential learning. Natalie has had a private practice for 14 years and became a therapist because she was a client and experienced how psychotherapy changed how she related to everything. In her work, Natalie engages others using her vulnerability, personal stories, and experiences through which she found her own strength. As a training consultant, Natalie facilitates experiential workshops, online courses on mental health and inclusion and belonging. Her current program, entitled The Comfortable Race Conversation Process, which leads individuals through an experiential process to learn how to have uncomfortable conversations about race with other races. This program has been included in the Government of Canada's 50-30 Challenge as a tool to support organizations to have more honest conversations about race. Wow, I'm so excited for this conversation. So let's dive in. Welcome, Natalie. I'm so excited for this conversation and an opportunity to get to know you better. So let's just start with, how are you? What's new? Give us a little intro on your day so far.
My day so far. I'm actually wonderful because I spent the weekend teaching a group of student therapists how to have conversations about race. And it was a group of white students specifically. And the feedback was, or they left with words of being open and hopeful and having lots of possibility towards being able to enter into these conversations that are so important. So yeah, I feel pretty great today, actually.
It must be so fulfilling. So when you bring a group like that together, is it intentional that they're all white, or it just sort of happens, depends on the activity or the container?
Well, this specific group was intentional because they're students at the Gestalt Institute in Toronto. And so the school is really looking at, how are they supporting BIPOC students? And so one of the things that they did was create through the students, asking for support. So they created a BIPOC student only sort of community group, and which went very well. And then the white students were like, well, wait a second. We want to know, we want to know what to do. We want to know what we don't understand. We understand that there's something happening and we don't know why we don't understand it. It's like you don't know what you don't know, right? So so I am a graduate of that school, and I'm on the board right now. So I just did the program because I already do this in my other life. So and for me, it's very important because as a therapist, I'm a psychotherapist, and I do corporate consulting, not consulting, but facilitating teaching workshops specifically around this topic. But I know as a therapist, race being one of our skin color being one of our biggest organs, is something that's in the room and it's a part of us, and we have feelings and thoughts and, emotions associated to it. And it's confusing because we are not allowed to talk about it. And it's hard because there aren't rooms, and there aren't a lot of rooms and spaces, I believe, where people can say, this is what I'm walking around with. These are all the shoulds I have. Am I allowed to say this? Am I not allowed to say this? What happens if someone says this to me? And there's so much feelings that are underneath all of that make it such a loaded conversation that, bringing it back to a therapy situation, if you're not able to lean into that with your client, you're missing a whole big part of them. A whole big part of who they are that they may not get to explore and need to. So for me, to be able to support, so specifically this group of white students, to be able to explore these conversations was for me an honor. And because those are a group of people that now have a different relationship to the concept of race, and have maybe been able to unload all of those, or not unload, because I didn't take it, not mine, but able to allow it to have a different understanding of all those feelings. So they could just be like, okay, I get it, and I can do this differently, and I don't have to walk around with all this shame and guilt and discomfort of not knowing, So, I feel like it's really important. So to have all white students was important because, when, having all Black students, when they're able to get together and not have to work around, do you understand where I'm coming from with this topic? Just to be in a space where people get it. It's the same with the white students. They're like, we don't get it. And we're all in here not getting it. I don't have to try so hard, So
it almost feels like a safer space in that context.
Exactly. And then when you're not working to try so hard, and you're not worried about, you don't have the stress and fear of, what is about to be said, whether it's from yourself or someone else, you can relax and actually lean into it. Lean into whatever that is, But if it's like anything, you go into something stressed, you go into something tight. How do you even lean into that? Lean into whatever that is, So, it was an honor for me, because because we need more people that can talk about race.
Definitely. Yeah. So how is it? I mean, is it always, it sort of sounds like that's an ideal situation where everyone in the room was actively seeking out this experience and, very open to, hopefully feeling more comfortable, more enlightened, having some tools so they can move forward and hopefully, spread the same comfort in other circles. But I'm sure sometimes you're going into groups that, they've just been told they have to take this learning experience, and maybe they're not as open to what you have to say.
There's always going to be people that that are not ready to do that. I've definitely had a few experiences like that where, everybody's coming at this topic in different places. You have to be able to, I think that's the piece that is how I see it. I don't think everybody sees it that way, but I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that we all come to this topic with our own awareness and our own readiness and our own ability to be able to, not ability, but if there's something that's stopping us from learning about it, I don't see that as right or wrong. And I see that as, if people are willing, a place to get curious, to say, what's stopping me right now from being able to lean into this place? And it is, for me, it's just so important from a human perspective, human to human perspective, for people to be able to be where they are, because if they can, and they can have some support, because there might be something that's stopping them, and I don't know what that might be about. And I, and I don't want to say it's a white thing that people can't lean into it, because like, I'm sure there's some people that's their ideology and that's the way that it is, but that's not who I'm talking to. I'm usually talking to people who are like, I want to do something and I don't know how to do this. And as soon as we start to lean into a topic and I can already feel my shame coming up, then that might stop me. It might make me change the conversation. Something could happen. But the way that I approach it, and I approach this with clients, this is the theory that I learned, that I believe in, is that if I can allow myself, or if I can get curious with somebody about what might be stopping them, they can go, oh, right. I'm imagining that next step is going to mean that I'm a bad person. And no matter who and how we are and what situation we're talking about, every single human has that feeling of shame that says, I am bad and I am not worthy. And nobody wants to feel that. Nobody wants to feel that. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. And nobody wants to go into a place where they're being slammed in the face with this. So I don't want to do that to somebody, because I wouldn't want that done to me.
Yeah.
So the more that I can support people with where they are, then they have some room to be able to see, okay, what's the reason that I'm doing this? Or what's the reason that, I'm stopping the conversation? And then they can move forward, if they choose. But the ground has to be feel stable. But our brains are actually wired to not put ourselves in places where there isn't safety. So this is like a physiological thing. This is a psychological thing. And I believe approaching these conversations with that in mind is really important. It's just so important. So, yeah.
Well, it seems like you come at this with so much love and wisdom. I'd love to back up a little bit about, sort of your transition. I can really resonate with the fact that you got into psychotherapy because you had a great experience as a client and you were, inspired. I don't know if you can go into a little bit more detail of, how you felt that it made you see everything differently.
I think psychotherapy saved my life. And I don't in terms of how I saw myself. So I went to my first therapist when I was about 24, 25. And I was talking to a colleague at work. I was on a buying team at Canadian Tire, way back when, Canadian Tire Corp. Mm-hmm. And my buying assistant was like, maybe you should talk to somebody. And I was like, I am not crazy. And she's like, just call this person. She tried this number to me. And that was sort of the beginning. And all of a sudden I found a way to explain the way I thought about myself and all the feelings that I was experiencing. And I found a way to put words to those feelings that I was feeling. And it just, to me, automatically, it meant that I didn't have to be like this anymore, because I just felt like there was just something inherently wrong with me. And so all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, when I'm in my cubicle, I don't work at Canadian Tire anymore, but I love that company. I loved my time there. But when I was at my cubicle, I'd have people coming and sit with me to talk all day. Mm-hmm. It was my forte, I was, and even as a manager, that was, and I ended up going into management there, but it was a, my ability to be able to be with people was, that was easy. So becoming a therapist was wonderful. So I went to the Transformational Arts College. And then after that, I went to the Gestalt Institute of Toronto, which was, for me, both were great. But for me, the Gestalt Institute of Toronto was where I just learned about the whole thing from the inside out. all of therapy from the inside out. So just, it created a way for me to express myself that made sense to me, and to be able to be a guide for clients or for people who are in that place to basically to find self-compassion and permission for all the parts of themselves. You know, it's like, how do you find, like, it's like owning all of you. So how that ended up, you know, coming to, how did I end up doing these conversations about race? It was sort of serendipitous. I had a really difficult relationship with my race, my own, like, my identity, my racial identity. So, and that was something that over the years and through, you know, my therapy and through work, I really worked on, you know, what was my identity around race. And there was a workshop, a woman that came into, that did a workshop at the Institute. Her name is Deborah Plummer, and she is she's the chief diversity officer at University of Mass Medical. And so her approach, which is not unique, but she put this in a, you know, in this theoretical perspective, was looking and understanding your racial identity and how it was developed, because we don't. So when you think about your aspects of identity, like gender expression, sexual orientation, nationality, ethnicity, all of those different parts of you, you have thoughts, feelings, beliefs. There's a psychological relationship to those aspects of self. But race is one that, for people of color, they've always had to contend with that. Like, they've always had to be in relationship to it because it's a thing. It's, you know, it's seen. And for people that are white, you might not have ever had to think about it. It's like, so I think on a whole, racial identity and how we think about our race and how we have, what we have been told about our race and what we believe, what's true about us, it's almost like it's all separate. Like, people don't have I don't believe that people have the support to look at this aspect of self. And it's an essential part of who we are. It's an essential part of who we are. So as an example, when I was 7, that's when I learned that I was Black. So my mom was like, you know, because when you're younger, when you're a child, you're essentially like a blob of being, just emotions, like, you know. And I had a birthday party, and I would ask my mom if my one friend was going to come, and she said that, well, she might not come, and the reason why she might not come is because, you know, her parents don't want her to come here because we're Black. And I was like, I'm Black? Like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And I remember looking down at my skin color and noticing, like, oh, all of a sudden this means something. So this went from something that was I wasn't aware, and now all of a sudden it's in my awareness as a thing. And what this thing meant was that I may not be acceptable or liked or wanted. And I didn't consciously know that, but I kind of, in my body, I knew it, you know. And that developed, like, that was something that it made me not want to be Black. It made me not, and that's an internalized racism. So that's what I'm saying. It's like the definitions of, and that's what I saw in media, all of that, you know, what was acceptable and who's acceptable and who's liked and who's not liked and all that. So the world is telling me this thing and this message and story that I already had kind of come to myself. And then I pushed it way down deep inside of myself, because how do I be in a place where I don't like the thing that I am? Like, it was this deep shame. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when I say that therapy saved me, it allowed me to have, you know, this, you know, come to some kind of awareness of what was this thing that I, you know, shoved way down deep inside. What did I believe about myself? And once I came to terms with that, to say that, wait a second, this isn't true. And what does Black mean for me? That element of my race is Black in the, in society could mean X, Y, Z. But my work allowed me to say, my therapy allowed me to say, Black means that I'm beautiful, that my skin is, looks like whatever. Like there's all these things that became internally important and allowed me to inhabit that part of myself. If I hadn't done that, it would have shown up everywhere. It did show up everywhere. It showed in how I carried myself. It showed in how hard it was, easy it was to put myself out there. So coming to terms with that aspect of self, I believe for every single person is important. And what it means in relationship to other people as well. Because I would say that that's my story. That's not everybody's story, but it's mine. And so for someone else, it might not be easy to be in a room where there's a whole bunch of white people that are talking about, what they're feeling. I would not say that would be the same for everybody, because there is so much grief and loss at hearing people learn something for the first time that you've known your whole life. Mm. Like it's a lot of grief and it's a lot of loss. And I think that those are hard feelings to feel. And I think that, so there's just so much healing that's needed for all people.
So many follow-up questions. First, is it a given the internal racism is part of the Black experience, or it really depends on the person?
Yes. My sister was completely different. My sister had, we had different experiences growing up, like in terms, because that's what I mean. Every single person has a different relationship to that aspect of self based on their individual experiences, what they've been told, the stories they heard. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like our psychology. It's like, think about self-esteem. It's not a given that, all men are confident. It's not a given that all women are, all whatever the stereotype, whatever the thing might be.
And for you, in your personal experience, did you find that internal shame manifested in other ways? Like in some sort of physical stress or in your health?
I believe that was a big source of my anxiety. I think it made me a people pleaser. I would have described myself as a chameleon, way back when. Yeah. And really, because at the end of the day, we are relational. We want to be connected to each other. And we are always it is in our nature to be connected. We want to be thought well of. We want to be included, to be seen. So if there was a place at the time, there was a place in me that didn't feel like I would be acceptable this way. So I had to, change myself in some way. And it was really unconscious, which is the interesting thing. So my awareness of that is what made it, that's what allowed me to change and really take a look at how am I showing up in this moment? What am I doing? And what was the reason I was doing it in the first place? So I could have some compassion for how I got to this moment, we need that. We need that.
Yeah. So in my work, I teach people, various health and wellness practices. And I think one of the ways that I do it differently is from the get-go, I'm very clear that, look, it's not like you're going to learn this and then everything's going to be fine. It's this. this ongoing, maybe not daily, but like some sort of consistent practice that you're implementing, and you're going to backtrack once in a while, and then you'll remember, oh right, I need to be focusing more on this. And there's an ebb and flow in that. It's a process, it's a journey, all this. And I'm guessing it's the same in your work.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. It's like the philosophy of anti-racism. I think the thing with it, when it comes to this, when it comes to understanding inclusion, DEI, like all that stuff, is like, a lot of people are like, okay, well, what do I say? What am I supposed to say? Well, like, you can't give somebody a list of things to say that you're going to memorize it. And then, like, you can say something to me, but that doesn't mean you can say something to them. I can say something to you, but it might not mean I could say something to someone else. You have to look at the person in front of you. And, what do you experience with them? How do you approach them? Otherwise, you're just putting people in another bucket. So, like, when it comes to what you're sharing, what your question is, that, like, the goal really is to allow people to be unconsciously aware. Like, I don't know what I don't know. And all of a sudden something might fly out of my mouth, or a thought might come to my, that comes in that, oh no, I am categorizing people right now. I've just put one on top of the other. What just happened? What made me do that? And if you can be in a place where you don't think you're a bad person because that happened, then you can still explore that. But until you can be in a place where it's like, oh, I walked by a Black man and my body tightened, or I saw this white person said this, and all of a sudden I could feel myself getting so tense because I'm imagining they're about to say something. It's like, okay, wait a second. How did I get there in the first place? Oh yeah, because that's happened to me a ton of times before. But now my awareness, I notice my reaction. I notice what I'm thinking about it. And I can say, hold on a second, is this happening now? Oh, and if it is, now I'm aware, and now I can do something different. But if I'm aware and it's loaded with shame, I'm just going to work so hard just to be right, just to do the right thing, just to be the right kind of person, just to be a good person again. And that might mean, and what that means is I'm only focusing on trying to be a good person and not actually being with what is required in the moment, like really noticing what's my intention here. Because maybe you do need to be in a place where it's like, oh, shoot, I did think that. Yeah, I could see how I got here. Well, that's not who I am now. And now I can do this. It's like when it's like when you're working on your confidence, and all of a sudden you watch, you feel yourself do something and you're like, how did I get there? Oh yeah, right. Because, I had this conversation with this person, and it triggered me in a way. And all of a sudden I walked into that meeting and I couldn't speak. How did I get there? If I can say that I'm not a bad person because that happened, or I'm not, I should just forget about it all because I'm never going to be confident. But if I could say, oh, I could see how I got here. I could see how this thinking or this person said this, and how, it made me stumble. Okay, well, I can, process that. And now I can show up at the next meeting differently, because that's not who I am. So that's the piece about, understanding, like, anti-racism is being in a place where it's like, it's a process, and over time it changes. So I went from being a child with this inherent belief about myself, to now I'm in rooms talking about my relationship to the concept of race. It changes as we lean into these things. What is uncomfortable becomes comfortable, possible. Mm-hmm.
I love everything that you're saying. So can you give us a little bit of insight? Do you feel like there's some sort of, diffusing the tension type exercises that are required at the beginning of these things? Or maybe a different way of looking at my question is, is there something that really surprises people about how the process is versus what they think they're getting themselves into?
I think that typically people, might go to a session, when they're wanting to learn about this topic, where, maybe they're learning concepts. How I approach this is I want every single person to look at how their identity has been created or developed in relation to race. So you're using yourself as the learning tool, which is the internal work that's needed. I believe now, I really do believe now, because everyone's like, you need to do your work, you need to do your internal work. And it's true. Every single person does. And that internal work is how did I come to, how did I look? What was my first memory of race? And how does that make me feel when I think about it? And in the conversations that I've had with people, people have said, oh gosh, I feel so much shame just remembering the story. It's just, and it makes you want to take the story and bury it somewhere. But the problem is that it's not buried, it's actually in your body. That's why you feel it in the moment, right? So being able to be with that, and with that, what is emerging, the physical, so like somatic, emotional, and come to a new understanding of that with your current perspective, your adult eyes, you can transform that relationship to that memory. And it's like, oh yeah, right. My dad was racist. And that made me feel really uncomfortable. And my adult eyes tells me that isn't me. But I worried that, that makes me a little bit racist or whatever. Like I'm going to say the wrong thing because he did, or I could never show this part of myself, whatever it might be. Or my parents used to say this, and somebody's like, I feel like really hot even telling you this, Natalie. Yeah. So now what? But until you allow yourself to know, like, how did that inform how I see people? How did that inform and guide what I believe about people? Do I look for other things other than what I was told about people? Then you might not even know that you believe those things. So that's why the internal work is necessary, so that you know what you do, and you know what you don't, and you can bring your current self to those same things and say, okay, well, now what? But if you don't go there, then something will fly out of your mouth, or you'll say something, or you might pass over someone because of, and not even be aware of it. Like I always use the metaphor of, like, when you're getting a massage and then the massage therapist, like, they find that knot inside and you're like, oh my gosh, how's that been there? I've been walking around with that knot for like, and then you work it out and it's really painful and then it's gone. And you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I have more access to all of myself.
So what do you say? I'm sure people ask you, something unconscious, accidentally, however you want to look at it, comes out of your mouth, and you're in a situation where you, in that moment, feel shame and feel bad for a way that you approached it or saw it. And what's the best thing to do?
I always ask people to go back to their intention. Like, one, you have to acknowledge how, like, whatever was said, how that landed. And believe someone's experience, whether you intended it or not. Like, it still landed. So, that's first thing. Like, and can you allow yourself to be with how you impacted that person? Like, that's first and foremost. And that sucks because it feels bad. But it's more important because when someone, it's like, someone impacts you in a way. I know if someone impacts me in a way, and there's a heartfelt, like, I didn't, I'm sorry I missed you. That wasn't my intention. My shoulders drop a little bit, I feel seen. I feel like what I experienced was validated. So that's the first thing, is like being able to really honor someone's experience. And two, without trying to fix it.
That's hard too, no?
Yes. Don't fix it. You can ask the person, you can say, here was my intention. I'm sorry. And, what can I do? But I think sometimes, we try to be so quick with the apology that it doesn't really land. So we're going to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get it wrong because we don't know all things, all people. And that's why I'm being able to be with this emotional part of ourselves and learn how to, I don't like to use the word tolerate, but just be with it, allows you to be with other people also. It creates connection. Because if you're ready to fix it because it feels bad, or you're ready to fix it because you don't like feeling bad, then you're just more about fixing and not really about what the other person might be experiencing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that resonates. When someone's apologizing, it's kind of like ripping the Band-Aid off quickly, so it doesn't hurt for them to apologize. Yeah. Like, that doesn't really count.
Yeah. Like, oh, great. The other piece too is I think that, that's how we learn. If I really allow myself to understand someone's experience, then I know that I might have been too quick, or where I went wrong, or how what was I looking at that I didn't see that person. And it's in the missteps that you learn where to step.
Mm-hmm.
So it's beneficial for both. It's a win-win situation. But I believe we live in a culture where it's hard to be wrong with someone.
Yeah. Do you use a lot of storytelling to help?
I do. Yeah, I do. And I don't know, it's important for me because I think it is through people being able to tell stories that, one, you feel the feelings of those stories. It brings our humanity into the forefront, and I think that's at the end of the day, it's like we're humans that we're put into groups based on kind of how we look, period. And we have stories according to all of that, and how we see each other and how we have seen each other and what the stories are into, all that stuff. So I think it's the stories and the feelings that come up that make us the same. And we feel that when we tell our stories with each other, if we really hear and can allow ourselves to be with each other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Our discomfort gets in the way.
Yeah. I love how you really started with that piece, just how essential it is to be open to the work to one, sort of the mental, intellectual piece, but then it's more an embodied emotional openness to lean into that uncomfortable feeling of not knowing, maybe shame around not knowing, but also accepting that you've misstepped in the past. We all have. Mm-hmm. And human interaction, whether it's specific around race, I'd say that's pretty universal as well. But, if you can just sort of get to that work in understanding that you've made someone unintentionally feel bad in the past, and the way forward is really acknowledging that in a much deeper way. Yeah.
And how did I get there?
Yeah. I think that piece to the sort of unraveling the identity, and to me, it was so interesting to have the perspective that racial identity is so personalized.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because how, like, who I am as a Black woman is my expression of being Black in the world. You know, it's very unique. My husband's white. My children are, if you saw them, the right passing, you know, my parents are Jamaican. My father is, we've got like on both sides, like there's so many mixed nationalities. So my father's like Italian looking or, Middle Eastern looking. And my mother's Black. And, I've got nieces that are half Filipino, or a niece and nephew that are half Filipino. I've got two nieces that are Black. And so my family looks like all nations. And so, I think this is important because my son said to me once, he's like, well, can Black people be racist? I said, and this is, based on this identity work, specifically Beverly Daniel Tatum. She's like, she asked the question in her book, but when my son said that, I said the same thing that she says in her book. I was like, well, it kind of depends on the definition that you're using. If someone's going to judge you based on your skin color, then, that's prejudice, being prejudicially racist. And I said, I would never want anybody to judge you based on your skin color, And I will also say this, that, that the fact that my son looks white when George Floyd was murdered, all these women were talking about how their children were, they're scared for when their boys go out and what might happen. And I remember in that moment just saying, never going to have to worry about that. And then I was horrified at what I said, that I'm never going to have to worry about that. And that was deeply shameful. And I think that that's where I had a choice to say, because there's women that look like me, and I have the advantage of, like, the white advantage of not having to worry that my son might be stopped for a cop and prejudged because of the skin color. Like, it's not fair. And at that point, I had a decision to make of what am I going to do with this privilege and awareness that I have, this unique set of circumstances of who I am as a Black woman in the world. So that's when I started creating these workshops and a program. And to be able to sit with people in their feelings, I think is essentially important to all of this process. And to me, it doesn't matter what race you are. You have a feeling in relation to the concept of race.
Of course, I agree.
And I know white people do, and I know that Black people do also,
What a powerful origin to this philosophy and process that you've created. In my lifetime, it seems like the point where you made, like, that people feel uncomfortable and like that's not your discomfort. Do you feel like it's shifting in that people are at least aware that this kind of uncomfortable, like accepting that you don't know what you don't know, that's something that's on us, not on Black people, to make them feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I don't think it's on anybody. Like, I think it's on each individual person. Like, if I'm sitting with a room of people, I don't feel uncomfortable. I feel quite solid. It is not mine. And I say that because I have a background as a therapist. If I'm seeing a client, it is not mine. I already think they are a whole person and they just have something that they're unaware of. I do not take on anybody's feelings. They are already whole. They've survived whatever they've survived. Now they're just processing what it is that they've been through. It is not my job. Like, it's not my job. But if you are not aware of the different things that you are feeling, because we are human and relational, and we pick up things that are in the space between people, there is the feeling of, someone's sad or someone's whatever. It's like, I got to take care of you. Well, my training and my history teach, like, I don't do that. Like, I can just sit with you and you can be sad and it doesn't have anything to do with me. But until you can come to terms with your own emotions, your own feelings of sadness, grief, loss, then I will be activated when someone else is activated. Like, as a therapist, if I get activated in a room, I'm going to see my supervisor because I know something's going on with me. It's not them. So that's why I can sit in a room. It's not my burden. It's not mine. And it's not any Black person's either. And there's no transference of stuff. That's the problem. So it's like trying to fix a psychological problem logically, but it won't work.
Yes.
Everybody's got their own work around how they see race. How do you see another person? And that is, as a Black person, how do you see white people? Because if every white person is racist, then you're going to miss the person that's not, or unaware of what they may have internalized. Let's say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a white person thinking that, every Black person is going to be mad at you because you say something, you're going to miss the people that might not be, that are like, I'm really open to this. I want to know. But you have to check out who the person is in front of you. But people are so caught up in the feeling of feeling bad without you even being aware of it. It's like, you're so caught up in like, I don't want to go there. You won't. So yeah, I could talk about it so much. It's just so important. It's so important.
Oh, you're so inspiring. And I'm fascinated by sort of the similarities in, in just becoming a better human all around on all fronts. Like, this is a massive piece. And the process is very similar to all the other ways that we're all working on ourselves, right? So I guess to wrap up, is there something that you want to say or do say to the people that you can sense that they really lack this awareness? Like, they're really just kind of sitting in the like fear of not wanting to say anything wrong.
Yeah, I do. Take a step, lean into it. I mean, you are with people all the time. And if you don't know what you don't know, you may be unintentionally hurting people that you love. And I mean, I sat with this group of people today that were so afraid that they were going to hurt me. They were so afraid. Like, there was so much emotion around that. And I don't want people to be afraid in this, because you'll just not do it, or you'll just, do it to not be wrong. And then you'll miss the person in front of you. Like, nothing will change. It's important. And not just to be with other people, but to be a full part of who you are. Like, to really be able to own your race as Black people and as white people, It's like people are like, my whiteness is going to show up here. And I'm like, well, what does that mean for you? That's my question. It's like, what does that mean for you specifically? Are you going to pull out words that someone else has said? Or are they words that are true about you as a white person because you've explored it?
Yeah.
My definition of myself as a Black person was not aligned with who I was when I grew up, because I'd done that work and I shed the other stuff. So I was able to become more of who I am. And I think that everybody needs that.
Perfect ending. What a beautiful conversation. Thank you. I'll share all the ways that people can connect with you, unless there's anything specifically you wanted to highlight.
Yes, I run a program called the Comfortable Race Conversation Process, where I have people come together and explore this topic. There's pre-recorded videos, but there's 6 practice circles where participants meet weekly and explore these topics, and experientially and somatically, so that they can create a new awareness around, or new relationship to their race, their racial identity, and with compassion and, with all this stuff. And then I don't exactly know when this is, but I think if people find me, they'll be able to find this. So I'm in the process of creating like almost like a shorter version of this that people could listen to, you know. So I guess stay tuned because those details will be out soon. So yeah.
Get on your list. I'm getting on your list.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Natalie. I so appreciate you, and thank you for taking the time and sharing your wisdom, and just so much heart that you bring to this work. It comes through, and yeah, I just appreciate you so deeply. Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I hope that you enjoyed this conversation. I would be really appreciative if you feel so called to support the show by either subscribing to the show on your favorite podcast platform, leaving us a review, and passing this episode or another favorite episode on to a friend. I hope you have a beautiful week wherever you are in the world. Sending you my love.